The night the ordinary world cracked. The first time Ilara Voss said she would never fall in love with a driver, she was standing under flickering restaurant lights, humiliated, exhausted, and trying not to cry in front of strangers who thought she was invisible. Rain hammered the city pavement like a warning from the sky. Neon lights reflected in puddles. Luxury cars slid past without slowing. Inside the restaurant behind her, laughter echoed, sharp, cruel, dismissive. Next time, her manager had said loudly enough for customers to hear, try not to drop wine on guests who pay more for dinner than you make in a month. The customers had laughed. Ilara had apologized. Again. And again. And again. She had learned long ago that survival sometimes meant swallowing pride until it burned like poison. At 24, Ilara worked 3 jobs. Morning bakery assistant. Afternoon cleaner. Night waitress. She sent most of her money to her younger brother, who was still in school in their small coastal hometown. Their parents were gone. There was no backup plan. There was only forward. Tonight had been especially bad. A wealthy social media influencer had accused her of ruining the aesthetic by existing too close to her table. When Ilara tried to fix the situation, the manager sided with the customer. Of course he did. Outside, her hands trembled as she opened her rideshare app. She didn't own a car. Couldn't afford one. Public transport had stopped running because of the storm. The app processed her request. Driver found. Name Adrian Vale. Vehicle, black sedan. Rating, 5.0. 5 stars. She almost laughed. 5 stars meant nothing. People could fake anything. Her phone buzzed again. Driver arriving, 2 minutes. The car pulled up silently through the rain, headlights cutting through mist like twin blades. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't expensive looking. But something about it felt precise, controlled. Like it belonged to someone who chose power instead of showing it. She opened the back door and slid inside. Warmth wrapped around her instantly. Leather seats. Faint scent of cedarwood and something darker, like night air before a storm. Good evening, Miss Voss. His voice. Oh, come. Controlled. She froze for half a second. Most drivers didn't greet passengers by name unless they checked the app carefully. Most didn't sound like that, like velvet over steel. Hi, she said quietly, pushing wet hair behind her ear. Sorry if I'm dripping on your seats. It's only water, he said. Not something worth apologizing for. The car pulled smoothly into traffic. She stared out the window, watching rain distort the city lights into streaks of gold and red. After a moment he spoke again. Long shift. She hesitated. Normally she avoided conversation. But something about his tone felt safe, neutral, not pitying. 3 jobs, she said finally. Tonight was the restaurant. Silence. Then quietly. Someone treated you badly. It wasn't a question. Her throat tightened. People treat waitresses badly, she said lightly. Another pause. I don't. She almost turned around to look at him. But she didn't. Because she didn't trust men with voices like that. Or eyes like that, because when she caught his gaze in the rearview mirror, she saw something impossible. His eyes weren't just dark. They were ancient. Calm. Observing. Like he was measuring the world and finding most of it disappointing. She looked away quickly. I don't date drivers, she said suddenly, surprising herself. Silence filled the car for 2 full seconds. Then, softly he laughed. Not offended. Not amused. Just interested. I didn't ask you out. I know, she said quickly, cheeks heating. Sorry? I just meant that you have rules. Yes. Rules keep fragile things safe, he said. But they also keep strong things trapped. Her heart stumbled. She hated how that sentence made her feel. The car stopped outside her apartment building. An old brick structure with broken stair lights and graffiti near the entrance. She reached for the door handle. Miss Voss. She paused. Yes. Eat something warm tonight. She frowned slightly. Okay? Your hands are shaking from low blood sugar. She froze. How did he notice that? She turned slightly, finally seeing him fully. Sharp cheekbones. Dark hair falling slightly over his forehead. Expression controlled but not cold. And those eyes again. Watching. Not judging. Just seeing. Good night, Mr. Vale. Good night, Ilara. He said her first name like he had tested it for years. She told herself she forgot about him. She told herself drivers were drivers. Temporary. Background. Not important. But 3 nights later, when she requested another ride after closing the bakery, driver found. Adrian Vale. Again. Coincidence. It had to be coincidence. The car pulled up. She got in. "Hello again, Miss Voss." Her stomach flipped. Weeks passed. Then months. Sometimes she got other drivers. Sometimes she didn't. But Adrian kept appearing. Always calm. Always respectful. Always observant. He never flirted. Never pushed. Never crossed lines. But sometimes when she laughed, she saw something soften in his eyes, something dangerously warm. And slowly, without noticing, she started telling him things. About her brother. About her childhood by the sea. About how she wanted to study nursing but couldn't afford school. And he listened. Really listened. Like every word mattered. Then one night changed everything. She left work late and found 3 drunk customers waiting outside. "Hey waitress," one slurred. "Come help us find our car." She tried to walk past. A hand grabbed her wrist. "Let go. Don't be rude." Fear crawled up her spine. Then headlights flooded the street. A car door slammed. Footsteps approached. And Adrian's voice cut through the night, low, calm, deadly steady. "Release her." Something in his tone made all 3 men step back instantly. Not loud. Not threatening. Just absolute. He stepped beside her, placing himself between her and them without touching her. "Leave," he said. They left. No argument. No insults. Just left. She realized she was shaking. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No." "Good." He opened the car door. And for the first time, she got into the front seat. The drive was silent. Heavy. Charged. Finally she whispered, "Thank you. I would never let harm come to you." The words came out like a promise. Not comfort. Not flirting. A promise. She turned toward him slowly. "Why?" He was quiet a long time. Then finally, "Because kindness should never stand alone in a cruel world." Her chest tightened. Dangerously. But what Alara didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that Adrian Vale wasn't just a driver. Wasn't just a businessman. Wasn't even just human. In the oldest hidden districts beneath the city, in halls carved before modern history, his name was spoken differently. Not Adrian, but Adrian Valerius, sovereign of the Night Court, vampire king, ruler of a hidden empire older than nations. And for the first time in 300 years, he was afraid, because a human girl with tired eyes and gentle hands had become the only thing in the world that could break him. The world beneath the world. If Alara had known that stepping into Adrian's car that night would slowly pull her into a hidden world older than civilization, she would have run. But destiny rarely announces itself. It arrives quietly, like a familiar driver waiting outside in the rain. Over the next few weeks, something shifted between them. Not dramatically, not suddenly, just subtly. Adrian began picking her up more often, though she never questioned the odds anymore. Part of her suspected he somehow made it happen. And strangely, she wasn't upset about it, because those drives became the safest place in her life. They talked about everything. Books, childhood memories, philosophy, why humans could be cruel, and why they could also be beautiful. And sometimes when she looked at him, she felt something strange. Like he wasn't just listening to her words. Like he was memorizing her existence. One night, after closing the bakery, she found him waiting outside without her even requesting a ride. She raised an eyebrow. "You're not even pretending this is coincidence anymore." "I was nearby," he said calmly. She crossed her arms. "Nearby where?" He tilted his head slightly. "Everywhere." She rolled her eyes, but her lips twitched into a smile. "Driver logic. If you prefer." She got into the passenger seat. It had become their unspoken rule. The city lights blurred past as they drove. Then suddenly he spoke. "You're working too much." "I have to." "You shouldn't have to." She looked at him carefully. "You say that like money isn't real." He didn't answer immediately. "Then, money is very real. But systems that force kindness into survival mode, those are flawed." She swallowed. "Easy to say if you're not drowning in bills." He nodded once. "I know." She almost laughed. No, he didn't. He couldn't. No one that calm, that composed, understood desperation. The next day her manager cut her hours, then blamed her performance. Again. She didn't cry this time. She just nodded. And left. Because survival sometimes meant leaving before they could break you further. That night she requested a ride. Adrian arrived in 2 minutes. She got in silently. He didn't ask questions. Just drove. Halfway through the trip she whispered, "I lost shifts." He nodded once. "I'm sorry. I'll manage." "I know you will." Something in his voice made her look at him. Not pity. Respect. Like he saw her as strong, even when she felt like she was barely holding together. The car turned down a street she didn't recognize. Adrian, this isn't my route. I know. Fear flickered. Not fear of him. Fear of change. Where are we going? To eat. I can't afford. You can afford your dignity, he said softly. The rest is handled. She hesitated, then exhaled slowly. Fine. But I'm paying next time. If there is a next time, he said, and something about the way he said it made her stomach flip. The restaurant was quiet, elegant, private. Staff greeted him like they knew him. Not like a regular customer. Like someone important. She noticed. She didn't comment. Yet. They sat across from each other. For the first time she saw him under warm light instead of dashboard glow. He looked unreal. Not beautiful in a soft way. Beautiful like something carved from shadow and marble. Dangerous. Ancient. She shook the thought away. Why are you being nice to me? She asked suddenly. He held her gaze. Because you are kind. That's not a reason. That's an observation. Then here is a reason, he said quietly. Because kindness deserves protection. Her chest tightened. Again. Dinner was quiet. Comfortable. Until she cut her finger on a fork edge. It was small. Barely bleeding. But Adrian froze. Completely froze. His pupils widened. His hands tightened around the table edge. Then he stood suddenly. I'll get a cloth. His voice sounded strained. Wrong. Like he was holding something back. She stared after him, confused. When he returned, he was perfectly composed again. But something had changed. Something she couldn't name. Later, as he drove her home, she said softly, "You're hiding something." Silence filled the car. "I'm not asking for secrets," she added quickly. "Just, don't lie to me." He exhaled slowly. "I don't lie to you." "Then tell me this." "Yes." "Why do you look at me like I'm fragile glass and fire at the same time?" He was quiet for a long time. Then, "Because you are." Her heart stuttered. That night, deep beneath the city, in a cathedral-sized chamber lit by ancient flame, a council waited. Adrian stepped inside. They bowed. "Your Majesty," one said. "You are late," another said carefully. "I was occupied." "With the human?" said a third voice sharp. Silence. Then Adrian spoke, calm, cold, absolute. "She is under my protection." Murmurs spread. "She is human. She is irrelevant. She is vulnerable." Adrian's eyes darkened. "She is none of those things." The chamber went silent. Because kings did not defend humans. Not like this. Not personally. Not emotionally. Back in her apartment, Ilara sat on her bed, staring at her phone. At his last message. "Eat breakfast tomorrow. And sleep more." She smiled softly. Then whispered to the empty room. "I don't fall in love with drivers." But her voice wasn't convincing anymore. And somewhere across the city, Adrian stood on a high balcony overlooking endless lights. And for the first time in centuries, the Vampire King was afraid. Not of enemies. Not of war. But of the moment she would discover what he truly was. And the possibility that she might look at him with fear instead of trust. The truth that changes everything. The truth did not arrive gently. It didn't whisper. It didn't warn her. It shattered her world in one single night. It started like any other evening. Ilara finished her bakery shift early. The city was glowing in soft evening light, traffic humming like distant waves. For the first time in weeks she felt almost calm. She opened the rideshare app out of habit. Driver found. Adrian Vale. Her lips curved into a smile she didn't even try to hide anymore. When the car pulled up, she didn't hesitate. She got into the front seat. "Hello, Miss Voss," he said, voice warm but controlled. "You know," she said, buckling her seatbelt, "you could just call me Ilara by now." His hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "Only if you call me Adrian." She turned toward him. "Deal." They drove in comfortable silence for several minutes. Then she said quietly, "I got another job interview today." He glanced at her. "And?" "Private hospital cleaning position. Night shift." His jaw tightened slightly. "That is beneath you." "No," she said softly. "That is survival." He nodded once. "Respect. Not pity. Always respect." Then the night changed. The car suddenly swerved. A black SUV cut them off violently. Adrian's entire posture changed instantly. Every muscle tightened. Every movement sharpened. Danger. Pure, controlled danger. "Stay in the car," he said quietly. The words weren't loud, but they weren't a request. They were command. Fear crawled up her spine. Not of him. Of what was happening. 3 men stepped out of the SUV. They moved wrong. Too fast. Too smooth. Predatory. Alara's heart pounded. Adrian stepped out of the car, and everything inside him changed. His posture straightened. His presence grew heavier. Like gravity itself shifted around him. One of the men smiled coldly. Well, he said. The king really does drive his own car. Alara's breath stopped. King. Adrian didn't answer. The men moved. And then, the world broke. They attacked faster than humanly possible. Adrian moved faster. The fight was brutal but controlled, like watching lightning choose where to strike. One attacker slammed into a wall. Another flew across the street. The third tried to run. Adrian grabbed him by the throat, lifted him like he weighed nothing. His eyes, they weren't human anymore. They glowed faintly crimson. The attacker choked. We were sent. By who? Adrian asked, voice calm and deadly quiet. The man hesitated. Adrian's eyes darkened. The man spoke. Then Adrian dropped him unconscious. Alara was frozen in the passenger seat. Heart racing. Hands shaking. Brain refusing to process what she just saw. Adrian stood still for several seconds. Then slowly turned. And looked at her. Fear hit him instantly. Because he saw it. Confusion. And the first flicker of fear. He walked slowly back to the car. Opened the door. Did not touch her. Alara. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. What are you? Silence filled the world. Then he said quietly. I am not human. Tears burned her eyes. I can see that. Another silence. Then he said. I am what your world calls a vampire. The word felt unreal. Impossible. Ridiculous. But she had just watched him do impossible things. You're joking, she whispered. I would never joke about this. Her breathing sped up. This isn't real. This isn't possible. I know. She pressed her hands to her temples. Vampires aren't real. We are very real. She laughed weakly, half hysteria, half disbelief. Of course I fall for a driver who turns out to be a vampire. His expression broke slightly at that word. Full. He stepped back slightly, giving her space, always giving her choice. I will take you home, he said quietly. No pressure. No demands. She stared at him, searching his face, looking for lies, finding none. They drove in silence. Heavy. Fragile. When they reached her apartment, she didn't get out immediately. Are you going to hurt me? She whispered. The question shattered something inside him. No, he said instantly. Have you ever hurt humans? Silence. Then carefully. I have protected my people. In war. In defense. That wasn't an answer, but it was honest. She nodded slowly. Okay. He blinked. You are okay? I didn't say that, she said quietly. I said, okay. For 3 days she didn't call him. Didn't request rides. Didn't message. And Adrian did nothing. Because he would never take her choice away. Even if it destroyed him. On the 4th day, her phone buzzed. Driver found. Adrian Vale. She stared at the screen. Long time. Then pressed accept. When she got into the car, neither spoke for almost 5 minutes. Then she said, You saved me. Yes. You protected me. Yes. You didn't lie. No. She exhaled slowly. Then said quietly, Then I'm not afraid of you. His hands trembled slightly on the wheel. First time she had ever seen him lose control. I'm terrified, she admitted. But not of you. That night he told her everything. About the hidden world. The night court. The ancient laws. The enemies who wanted power. And why she was now in danger. Because she mattered to him. And enemies always targeted what kings loved. She cried. Not because he was a vampire. Because she realized how lonely he must have been for centuries. You've been alone a long time, she whispered. Yes. She reached out slowly. Took his hand. Warm. Stronger than steel. And shaking. Across the hidden world. News spread. The vampire king had chosen a human. And ancient enemies began to move. Because hurting kings meant nothing. But breaking their hearts. That could start wars. The Queen Fae chose. Love doesn't always arrive as warmth. Sometimes it arrives as war. 3 weeks after Alara learned Adrian's truth, the world stopped feeling normal. Because once you know monsters are real, you start noticing shadows everywhere. She noticed how people moved around Adrian differently when they were in public. Some avoided eye contact instinctively. Some watched him with quiet fear they didn't understand. And sometimes, strangers stared at her, like she was important, or dangerous, or both. Adrian had been quieter lately, more guarded, more distracted. She saw it in the way his jaw stayed tight, the way he scanned crowds automatically, the way his hand hovered near her back whenever they walked through busy places. Protective. Always protective. One night she finally asked, "What aren't you telling me?" They were standing on his private balcony overlooking the city skyline. Wind moved through her hair. He stared at the horizon. "They know about you." Her stomach dropped. "Who?" "My enemies." The word felt ancient, heavy, real. "Why would they care about me?" He turned slowly. "Because you are the only person in 3 centuries who has ever mattered enough to weaken me." Her heart cracked open. That same night, the attack came. Not loud, not chaotic, silent, precise, deadly. The power cut in his building. Emergency lights flickered red. Adrian instantly pulled her behind him. "Stay with me," he said quietly. The air changed, cold, heavy. Then shadows moved. 5 figures stepped forward. Not human, not fully vampire either. Something older, something corrupted. One spoke. "The king chooses a human over his own kind." Adrian stepped forward. "I choose who I protect." "She will die," another hissed. Something inside Alara snapped. Not fear, not panic. Anger. Pure, steady anger. "I'm standing right here," she said sharply. The creatures paused, surprised. One laughed coldly. "Fragile human." She stepped beside Adrian. Not behind him. Beside him. "I survived poverty. I survived loss. I survived being treated like I was nothing," she said, voice shaking but strong. "You don't scare me." Silence filled the room. Adrian stared at her. Something like awe crossed his face. The fight exploded, faster than she could track. But this time, she didn't freeze. She moved, pulled a fallen metal rod, struck one attacker when it lunged toward Adrian from behind. The creature screamed and staggered. Adrian turned, shocked. Then something changed in his expression. Not fear. Not anger. Pride. The attackers retreated eventually. Not defeated, but warned. And one final message echoed as they vanished. "The human girl will be the start of your downfall, King." Later. She sat shaking slightly on his couch. He knelt in front of her, hands hovering near her face. Not touching. Asking permission silently. "You could have died," he said quietly. "You could have died too. I am harder to kill." "You're not harder to lose," she whispered. That broke him. Completely. He pulled her into his arms. Carefully. Like she was the most precious thing in existence. Days later. He took her somewhere secret. Deep beneath the city. The night court. Ancient stone halls. Flame-lit pillars. Dozens of vampires watching silently as they walked. Some curious. Some disapproving. Some respectful. Adrian stopped in the center of the chamber. "This is Alara Voss," he said. No title. No explanation. Just her name. And somehow, that was more powerful. An elder stepped forward. "She is human." "Yes," Adrian said. "She is vulnerable." "No," Adrian said. "She will age." "Yes," Adrian said quietly. "But while she lives," his voice lowered, "she will live protected, honored, untouched by harm." The chamber fell silent. Because kings did not make promises like that. Not publicly. Not emotionally. Then something unexpected happened. Alara stepped forward. "You don't have to protect me because I'm weak," she said. "Protect me because I choose to stand beside you." Shock spread through the chamber. Adrian closed his eyes briefly, like he had just lost and won everything at the same time. Months passed. Enemies retreated. Not gone, but cautious. Because word spread. The king had found his equal. Not in power. Not in immortality. But in heart. One night, standing again on the balcony where everything had changed, Adrian spoke quietly. "In my world, there is a word for the one who stands beside the king. Not by blood. Not by force. But by destiny." She swallowed. "What word?" He turned toward her. "Queen." Tears filled her eyes. "I'm still just a girl who works 3 jobs." He touched her cheek gently. "You are the girl who taught a monster how to hope again." She smiled softly. "I said I would never fall in love with a driver. And yet, And yet, I was very, very wrong. Below them the city moved, ordinary, unaware, and safe, because in the shadows, a king watched over it, and beside him stood the human girl who changed his eternity. Final ending moral: respect kindness, protect the vulnerable. Never judge someone by status, job, or appearance, because sometimes the driver is a king, and sometimes the poorest girl is destined to change the world.